I'd like to introduce James from England, who has multiple sclerosis. Welcome, James.
Hi.
Could you tell me when you first started to notice MS symptoms?
I would say the first symptoms came about the beginning of 2009, I would have said.
Right, and what symptoms were they?
Mainly I was having problems with my right leg dragging on the floor. That was the main symptom I had initially.
Right, and how old were you?
At the time I would have been 38.
Okay, so what were your symptoms like leading up to diagnosis?
Well, the dragging of my foot gradually got worse and worse. Initially, it was just something that would happen when I was very tired. If I'd had a busy day or if I'd walked a long distance, that's when it would occur. A lot of the time, I was fine. It was just when I was tired or had done a lot of walking. But over the next sort of 18 months, the dragging of the leg got more frequent and more pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, I obviously realised that there was something wrong, so I went and sought medical advice, had a full MRI scan and a spinal tap done, a lumbar puncture, and then from that I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
Okay, and were you offered any medication at that time?
Yes, well, not initially. I was offered Copaxone at a later date. At the time, I also had a steroid infusion, which was in the summer of 2011.
Mm-hmm.
That was a 3-day steroid infusion in hospital.
Yes. So did you notice any other symptoms before you found LDN? Was it just the leg?
The leg was the worst one, but then I did sort of have other symptoms as well, the fatigue, that's obviously very common with MS. Balance as well, my balance was starting to get a lot worse. Even just sort of walking around the house, I would lose my balance and I would have to hold on to the walls and this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Going to the toilet as well was a lot more frequent than it ever had been. I was getting up in the middle of the night several times sometimes. I would sort of not be able to have a drink after a certain time in the evening because I knew that I'd be up in the night. And if I'd be up in the night anyway, but if I had something to drink in the evening, even if it was just a cup of tea, that would make that a lot worse. So sometimes I'd be up to go to the toilet 3 or 4 times during the night.
Mm-hmm.
They were the main symptoms I had initially.
Okay. So when did you hear about LDN?
Really, when we sort of, myself and my wife did a lot of research, when obviously it was all new to us, when I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, didn't know anything about it at all because I'd never known anybody else, any friends or acquaintances who had it, so it was all new to me. So we both did a lot of reading into it, and sort of came across LDN, and you know, online really, and then sort of bought books on it and all this sort of thing, and it went from there.
Okay. And were you able to get a prescription from your own doctor?
I had to get the prescription from my consultant at the hospital.
Right. Whereabouts are you based?
I'm based in Lancashire, Preston in Lancashire.
Right.
I was actually pleasantly surprised because I'd read that people had trouble obtaining prescriptions for LDN from either their GPs or their consultants.
Mm-hmm.
But with myself, I was quite fortunate. When I actually went to the hospital to see him for my 6-monthly appointment, I was pleasantly surprised because when I mentioned it to him, he obviously knew all about LDN, had no qualms, problems at all about prescribing it for me. Mm-hmm. Mentioned that he had a number of other patients who also took LDN. His words to me were, well, he couldn't prescribe it through the NHS, but he could provide me with a private prescription for it. But he believed in it and had patients who'd been on it for a number of years, not shown any new symptoms. So, from what I could gather, because I was going to him with the information, and
Yeah.
asking him for LDN, and he knew all about it. He had no problems at all about prescribing it for me. It wasn't something he was going to suggest to me, because obviously it's not an NHS prescription.
Mhm. Okay. And when you first started, did you experience any initial side effects?
Not really. I was expecting some, but I don't recall any initial side effects at all. Maybe slight bit of tiredness, but nothing excessive. I mean, I started taking it in November 2011, so it's been sort of 6 months now, 7 months now. And yeah, I never had any initial bad side effects at all.
What dose did you start on?
I started on, let me think, I started on 1 milligrams.
Mhm.
And then I did a couple of weeks at 1, then went to 1.5, a couple of weeks on that, went up to 2, and built it up to 3.5.
Right. Is that what you're on now? 3.5.
I'm back down to 3 at the moment.
Okay.
I find 3 works better for me.
Mhm.
Sometimes if I was every now and again I sort of experiment with it and I adjust the dose slightly. But at one stage I went up to 4, but I was finding that wasn't the optimum dose for me.
Mhm. And what did you notice? When
I was on the higher dose.
No. When you first started LDN.
Oh, when I first started, well, initially the immediate symptom that improved was the getting up in the night going to the toilet.
Mhm.
I very rarely get up in the night to go to the toilet now. Initially, like I said, it could have been 3 or 4 times a night. From going to bed at 10 o'clock to getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning, I could be up 3 or 4 times in that 9-hour period.
Well, I beat you. I used to get up 6 to 8 times.
Right.
But if you don't sleep and it breaks your sleep up,
yeah,
you're so tired the next day, aren't you?
That's right. So initially, taking the LDN almost eradicated that completely. If I go to bed now and I've had a big drink of water or something, then yes, I'll probably get up to go to the toilet once during the night. But then who doesn't? Most people who haven't got multiple sclerosis and don't take LDN would anyway. So as long as I sort of am sensible and I go to bed, I'll not get up at all during the night.
Mhm.
So that was an immediate improvement on that side of things. That was the main improvement for me. I haven't had any new symptoms at all.
Mhm.
Like I say, I've only been taking it since November, but nothing new has cropped up at all. I do find that I've got a bit more energy by taking the LDN, providing I am sensible and rest during the day, listen to my body and do sit down or do have a little nap and this sort of thing.
Mhm.
I find I can preserve my energy better.
And what about your leg?
My leg, difficult because the steroids that I took improved that a great deal, but then it started to come back again. As long as I stay off the leg, then it's not as bad, but I don't think the LDN has had any effect with the leg. But it hasn't made it any worse, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
I think that my symptoms have sort of levelled off since I've been taking the LDN. I don't think anything has got worse at all.
Oh, that's good. I mean, I think I improved slowly for about 18 months.
Right.
So, you fingers crossed, might experience further benefits.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I've only been taking it since November, so I'm relatively new to it.
Mhm.
But for me, just the fact that I'm not getting worse is a big plus as far as I'm concerned.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what would you say to other people who are thinking of trying LDN?
Oh yeah, I definitely recommend it. Definitely. When I was first diagnosed, they wanted to put me on the Copaxone, and which I think, I might be wrong, but I think that's the injections.
That's right. Yeah.
I didn't like the idea of that. The LDN, I'd read very good things about it. I can't remember her name. I read a book about a lady in an Irish lady who lived in America.
Yes, Mary Bradley.
That's her. And that was a fantastic book about her husband taking LDN and this sort of thing. So I read up a lot on it about it initially, and still do. But yes, I would definitely recommend it. Definitely, because like I say, I think when you read stories about people who've taken LDN and then said, oh, well, it's done nothing for me, and they've come off it and they've sort of abandoned it, I think they're under the illusion that it's going to be an instant miracle cure and somebody's going to come along and wave a magic wand. Obviously, it doesn't work like that. And as long as LDN can keep me stable and keep me how I am, I think that's fantastic. Because when I read about the other drugs that the NHS offers, they just people don't stop progressing. When you read those stories from people. And as long as I can stop from progressing, I know people, all people will progress at different rates and this sort of thing. But I just want to, if I can stay as I am, because I am relatively, I'm not very far down the line with the MS anyway. Yeah. I haven't got particularly severe symptoms and this sort of thing. But if I can stay on this level, then I'm happy.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your story with us.
No problem at all. Thank you.
I'll just turn that off now, James.